Hi, I'm Logan Dalton, the librarian at the Center for Popular Music, and welcome to my flip through of Sniffin Glue #1 as part of International Zine Month. So, little background: Sniffin Glue was one of the first punk rock zines out of London. It was created by Mark Perry in 1976. He was influenced by blues and country zines for marginalized music in the UK, and he didn't like how some of his favorite bands were treated in the national press, so he decided to make his own zine, Sniffin Glue, and it was inspired by the Ramones song of the same title. So this first issue focuses mainly on the first two gigs of the Ramones in the UK, both in London, and it also reviews their self-titled album, and he also goes into a re-review of all the Blue Öyster Cult's back catalog, and also reviews albums, singles, and concerts. So let's get started. All right, so we're gonna flip through the first page. And yeah, it's a table of contents and manifesto for the zine. Kind of talks about how amateurish it is and misspells amateur. And yeah, you can definitely see the DIY vibe. Perry didn't actually do this on purpose. He just kind of fell into it because he typed this up with a children's typewriter that he got as a gift and used markers and was allergic to correction tape. And he mentions kind of some of the other bands that they'll talk about in upcoming issues. And yeah, also shouts out his record store, because as you go through the zine, it definitely feels like you're by Perry while he's digging through the bins to find something to review, something to write about, connect with. So let's go over to the next page. So we're really starting off the zine with a bang. We have the review of the two Ramones gigs and the review of their self-titled album. Both gigs were in London at the Roundhouse and Dingwalls venues in Camden Town. Camden Town has always been an important part of the London music scene. Amy Winehouse is from there. There's a pub called The Good Mixer where Blur signed their record deals. So yeah, it shows that even back then Camden was a big part of the industry. So yeah, you get right into the reviews, and Perry does a good job of putting you right in the pit. In the first one, he gives a good kind of description of their vibe and energy. And then we go down to the other venue, the venue at Dingwalls. He doesn't have much to say about it because he got kicked out of it. But he shouts out the Damned, who get written about in the next issue of Sniffin Glue. And yeah, he just shows his kind of connection to the energy and the hooks and everything about the Ramones. There's a bunch of typos in here. It just shows you he was just rattling these reviews off his typewriter and writing his favorite lyrics on marker and just trying to get a very up close and personal look at the band. Go to the next page. This is where we get into the kind of the retrospective reviews. He's talking about the Blue Öyster Cult, which is interesting because in 1976, the Blue Öyster Cult released their first charting album in the UK. So connected to that, he goes back into their back catalog, and you get a little bit of analysis of some of the major tracks. For example, he compares some tracks to Hawkwind and Deep Purple. So you can see that Mark Perry isn't just interested in punk rock. He's also interested in kind of classic guitar rock, but he doesn't like the 10-minute songs of prog. And cross over to the next page, where he talks about the album I mentioned earlier, Agents of Fortune, the first Blue Öyster Cult record to chart in the UK, and it has Don't Fear the Reaper on it, but he barely mentions it. It's such a huge hit, but he just says, oh, it has nice harmonies. And then below that, he also mentions a bootleg Blue Öyster Cult album, which is really interesting because I feel like Music Press at the time would just cover the official releases, but it's a fanzine, so he's like, yeah, I'll cover the bootlegs. I'll see, the releases from America and overseas. And you see that in a lot of other fanzines, like Maximum Rock and Roll has a lot of reviews of bootlegs. And then this really cracked me up. I didn't know what to put here, so I wrote this. So yeah, he basically ran out of Blue Öyster Cult albums to write about, so he just filled up the space, literally. So we're moving on from this hilarious page to review section. We get several artists who get reviews in here. First we have the Runaways, which his take did not age well in the Runaways. It's very sexist. It doesn't talk about any of the members of the band. It doesn't talk about Joan Jett or Cherry Curry or Sandy West, anyone in the band. It just talks about their manager, Kim Fowley, who did co-write some of the songs, but he kind of makes it sound like Fowley wrote all their songs, which is totally wrong. And it shows you kind of the sexism in music at the time, and it makes sense. It's being written by a young white heterosexual British man, so kind of makes sense that he would have this opinion, but it hasn't aged well. See, he writes about Television's debut single. They would go on to make Marquee Moon, so he really likes the guitar sound on that one, so that was one that aged a little better. And then he writes about a single by Eddie and the Hot Rods, and he also writes about a show by Eddie and the Hot Rods. He has some good analysis. He compares them to the proto-punk band, the Stooges, and then also compares them to Mott the Hoople and New York Dolls, so very much like that sound. A little context about Eddie and the Hot Rods: they never charted in the United States and are probably most well known for having a kind of a beef with AC/DC. So going over to page 7, we see kind of more of his range of interests. First off, we have the 101ers, and this band from Chiswick is most known for being the band that Joe Strummer was in before The Clash, but Mark Perry really liked them and had his own little kind of joke about them. And then he also mentions Captain Beefheart, Todd Rundgren, and not a lot of analysis for Captain Beefheart, but he mentioned some of his favorite songs by him. And then he also kind of has a critique of Todd Rundgren. He likes his first album, compares it to punk, but not a fan of his more recent material in the late 70s. So it's cool. You kind of see him interacting with earlier artists. So this zine runs a gamut between, fresh off the presses gigs, kind of reissues from about a decade ago. So it gives you a good range of content. So this final page of Sniffin Glue ties everything together. Mark Perry gives a big picture view of the punk scene in London. And he really puts a lot of personal thought into this. He says, the weeklies are so far away from the kids that they can't possibly say anything of anything importance to punk rock fans. I can't spell. I wouldn't win any awards for literature, but at least I don't write down to you. Love that. So basically he's talking about how the zine is the voice of the youth. It's not the kind of the voice of the mainstream music press, but he sees on how he kind of predicts how the mainstream music press is going to capitalize on this scene. After that paragraph, he talks about how kind of the essence of punk, which is just starting a band with the equipment you have, the clothes you have, and kind of doing your own thing, DIY, like this fanzine. Yeah, kind of he shouts out the Damned again, shouts out his local bands, and then ends with one little paragraph about the Ramones, and it says they're going to be a cult band and not going to play big venues. He wants them to stay small. It's kind of like today with artists like Chapel Roan. Like earlier this year, she was playing theaters, but now she's selling out amphitheaters, and her tickets are insanely pricey. So the feeling that you want to keep the scene small, but if an artist connects with someone, they'll blow up and they'll have their songs in Jimmy Neutron soundtrack. So yeah, that is Sniffin Glue #1. Yeah, I hope you liked the video. Please feel free to leave any comments and let me know if you want me to do any more flip throughs of Sniffin Glue or other periodicals or zines we have in our collection. So thank you so much.